signs of motherhood to show for it. "Right, got to go. Speak later. Love you." It was easy for Katie, Hannah reflected, turning off the motorway and watching as the green of the countryside was replaced with the sprawling outskirts of Oxford. She was on her own, no children, had a brilliant job as head of research at a huge multinational company, and didn't take any shit. She'd been working on not taking any shit since she left university, graduating with a first, of course, and climbing the ladder with a dogged determination to succeed. It wasn't quite so easy to start not taking any shit at the age of 35, when you'd had a lifetime of being the lovely, obliging one. Hannah ran through the mental list of things she'd put aside for one reason or another. Oxford always brought this hankering out in her. Years ago, when she'd found out she was pregnant at 19, in the first term of her degree, she'd put aside her ambition to be a professor of literature among the dreaming spires, and instead married Phil, her sixth-form sweetheart, who'd been slogging away at a business studies degree at a red brick uni in Lancashire. He had carried on his studies while she got a job working part-time at a nursery school, and when Ben was born, she'd taken him to work, popped him in the baby room, and fed him on her breaks. Logical, methodical, reliable. These were the words people used to describe her. They weren't bad things, though. That was what she consoled herself with. The grey sky split apart, and the city was lit with a shaft of bright, pale sunlight as she drove down the road, the golden stone soaking up the light, as if it was the least it deserved. The hotel was situated down a pretty tree-lined driveway, an old manor house that looked over a meadow full of cows, grazing incongruously opposite a row of tattered shops and student houses. She parked the car, hauled her overnight bag out of the boot, and headed inside to check in. If there was one thing the Reynolds family did well, excelled at, in fact, it was funerals. In the foyer of the hotel, she could see an assortment of distant friends and relations, most of whom she hadn't seen since her mother's funeral 2 years before. They looked up on seeing her, greeting her with warm smiles of welcome. "No Phil today? Is he following on?" Her cousin Andy lifted his chin and looked at her over the top of his pint of Guinness. "He's working. Can't get away. Last-minute thing." She pressed her lips together and waited. "Oh, what a shame. And Ben?" "School. An exam. I'm going to have this conversation about 18 times before the service," Hannah thought to herself, smiling politely and pointing in the direction of the reception desk. "Just going to check in." "Hannah Reynolds," she said, taking out a credit card and handing it across to the girl behind the desk. "And will Mr. Reynolds be joining you later?" She suppressed a small roar of fury. "Not today," she said politely. "Not this time." The funeral was just as moving as she expected. Tears, because Aunt Jess, Hannah's mother's sister, was only 78, no age at all, as everyone was telling themselves. Laughter, because her daughter Beth, who was as exuberant, loud and chatty as ever, had put together a photo montage set to music, which made everyone snort with amusement at the things Jess had got up to. Hannah had swallowed back the enormous lump in her throat that formed the moment she saw a picture of Jess standing arm in arm with her sister, Hannah's mum. They'd been best friends. Being an only child meant Hannah had missed out on that kind of bond herself. Washing her hands in the bathroom before the buffet, she thought about Ben and the troubles he'd been having at school. If he'd had a sibling, would things have been different? If they hadn't been shuttled from London to Inverness and then to Manchester, would he have been more settled? If she tried harder to find out why she couldn't get pregnant again? Well, no. That wasn't really her fault. She'd tried. She'd taken the vitamins and eaten all the things they'd recommended, and bloody Phil had taken it into his head that it couldn't possibly be his fault, because somehow it had to be her problem, not his. But, "You okay? You look like you're miles away." Hannah looked up, seeing her cousin Beth's reflection in the mirror. She shook her head. She was lost in her own self-absorbed thoughts, and here was Beth, who'd just lost her mum, asking if she was all right.